Welcome to solving rational equations and inequalities. Today's objective is to solve rational equations and inequalities. In this section, we're going to be adding fractions with uncommon denominators. Now, this is different than expressions because now we are dealing with rational equations. So in order to isolate x, here are the steps we want to do. The first thing we want to do is to find the lowest common denominator of all the fractions. So my denominators are 3, 4, and 2. So my lowest common denominator is 12. Then once I find the lowest common denominator of all the fractions, I want to multiply each fraction by the lowest common denominator. So I have my rational equation of x over 3 plus 1 over 4 equals 1 over 2. So I want to multiply each fraction by 12. So I'll multiply this one by 12, this by 12, and this by 12. Then I simplify. Then I have 12x over 3 plus 12 over 4 plus 12 over 2. When I simplify those fractions, I'm going to have 4x plus 3 equals 6. Then this is easy. I have 4x equals 3, x equals 3 over 4. So the first step is to find the lowest common denominator of all the fractions, multiply each fraction by the lowest common denominator, and then simplify and solve for x. And those are the main steps for solving rational equations. So let's solve this rational equation. We have x plus 8 over x equals 6. So our first step is to find our lowest common denominator. Well, denominators are 1, x, and 1. So our lowest common denominator is x. So then we want to multiply each fraction by lowest common denominator. So our fraction is x plus 8 over x equals 6. And I'm giving myself space just so I can multiply by the lowest common denominator. Now, when we multiply each fraction by the lowest common denominator, it takes everything out of the denominator, makes it easy to work with. So now I'm going to simplify, and I'm left with x squared plus 8 equals 6x. Now I want to write this in standard form and then see if I can solve for x. So I have x squared minus 6x plus 8 equals 0. So I see this is a trinomial that can be factored. So I factor the trinomial and I solve for x. So I need x is here, x is here. I know 4 and 2 will give me positive 8 and negative 6. So I need them both to be negative, and then I solve for x. So x equals 4 and x equals 2. And I can check both of these solutions by plugging them back into the original equation. So let's try x equals 4. So I have 4 plus 8 over 4 equals 6. 4 plus 2 equals 6. 6 equals 6. I'm good. Let's try x equals 2. 2 plus 8 over 2 equals 6. 2 plus 4 equals 6. 6 equals 6. So these two solutions of x equals 4 and x equals 2 work. Let's try some practice problems. So, in example A, I look at my three denominators. First step is to find the lowest common denominator. My denominators are 3, x, and the number 1. So my lowest common denominator is going to be 3x. Okay, next step, multiply. So I'm going to have 10 over 3 times 3x equals 4 over x times 3x plus 2 over 1 times 3x. Now let's simplify. So I'm going to have 30x over 3 equals 12x over x plus 6x. I simplify that, and I have 10x equals 12 plus 6x. Can isolate x, and I have 4x equals 12, and x equals 3. So once again, find your lowest common denominator, multiply each fraction by the lowest common denominator, and then just solve for x. So in all the examples so far, we've gotten solutions that have worked out perfectly. Sometimes we get extraneous solutions, also known as solutions that don't work. Let's solve for x and see if we get some extraneous solutions. So for example A, we have 3x over x minus 3 equals 2x plus 3. So the same process. I want to find the lowest common denominator, which here is just going to be x minus 3. Then I want to multiply both sides by lowest common denominator. So I have 3x over x minus 3 equals 2x plus 3 over x minus 3. Now I gave myself some space because I'm going to be multiplying both sides by the lowest common denominator. It's an equation, so it's okay if I do it to both sides. So I multiply this side by x minus 3 and this side by x minus 3. When I do that, these two cancel out, and I'm left with 3x equals 2x plus 3, solve for x, and I'm left with x equals 3. Now we can see the solution won't work because if I take 3 and plug it in right here, I'm going to end up with a 0 in my denominator. So we say that x equals 3 is an extraneous solution. Let's take a look at example B. Now for example B, our lowest common denominator is going to be 2 times x minus 7. So we want to keep it in this form because we want to multiply each fraction by that, and we see that we'll be able to cancel out a few things. So my first fraction, I have 2x minus 9 over x minus 7 multiplied by 2 over x minus 7 plus x plus 2 multiplied by 2 times x minus 7, and then I'm just going to go down here, equals 5 times x minus 7 multiplied by 2 times x minus 7. Multiplied each fraction by the lowest common denominator of 2 times x minus 7. So now let's cancel things out. We know that this x minus 7 goes away. So then we're left with 2 times 2x minus 9. We know that these 2's cancel out. Then we're left with plus x times x minus 7. And then on the right side of the equal sign, we know that this x minus 7, those cancel out. So we're left with 5 times 2, which is 10. So now this is just algebra, and we can work with this pretty easily. So we have 4x minus 18 plus x squared minus 7x equals 10. We simplify, we're left with x squared minus 3x minus 28 equals 0. We brought over the 10 from the right side. Then we can factor this. We have x and x, 7 and 4. We make the 7 negative, the 4 positive. Then our two answers are x equals 7, x equals negative 4. Now we're checking to see which one of these works. Now we know that x cannot equal 7 because we plug 7 right there, we get 0 in our denominator. So 7 is an extraneous solution and 4 is our actual solution. Let's solve the equation and check our answers. We're going to work on example B. So for example B, first thing we want to do is find our lowest common denominators. So our lowest common denominators here is going to be 6 times x minus 1. So now that we've found that, we're going to multiply each fraction by our lowest common denominator. So we have 1 over x minus 1 times 6 times x minus 1 equals x over x minus 1 times 6 times 6 minus 1 plus x over 6 times 6 times x minus 1. So we multiply each fraction by that, and then we cancel out. So the x minus 1's go away, the x minus 1's go away here, and the 6's go away here. Then if we rewrite our fraction, we have 6 equals 6x plus x times x minus 1. I want to distribute out that x, so I have 6 equals 6x plus x squared minus x. Let's put this whole thing in standard form. Let's have x squared plus 5x minus 6 equals 0. I want to factor this, so I'm going to make two binomials. I'm going to have an x and an x. I need to get 6 and 5 somehow. So what I need is I need a plus 6 and a minus 1. Let's solve for x. X equals negative 6 and x equals 1. Well, we know that x equals 1 can't work. So that is our extraneous solution. Our answer is x equals negative 6. And that'll be the end of the video for today. Thank you. Take care.